there's actually only one kind of vegetarian, and that's simply someone who eats no fish, flesh, or fowl. And I have been a vegetarian for 22 years. There's also vegans, and they eat no fish, flesh, fowl, or any dairy products, any animal secretions of any kind. So they avoid eggs, honey, butter, cheese, dairy. Gets a bit more complicated for them. Yeah. But to answer your question, Thanksgiving for vegetarians is really no different than Thanksgiving for anyone else, apart from the turkey carcass is not the centerpiece on your table. All of the foods that you talked about, all of the squash, the grains, the corn, the pumpkin pie, the mashed potatoes, Brussels sprouts, gravy, that's all vegetarian food. And with the absence of the carcass in the middle of the table, the turkey, we can enjoy a very happy, healthy, compassionate Thanksgiving. Have you ever, compassionate. Have you ever heard of the Tofurkey, Dr. Quinn?
I have friends who are rabid vegetarians. I make it just on the edge of being a good vegetarian because I'm from South Louisiana. And
you do the best you can. Okay.
I try really, really hard. But the one thing I can't bear is to be brutalized and bullied by a vegetarian.
Right.
But one of them threatened to bring Tofurkey.
Tofurkey, it's a fun word to say.
I can't say
fun
it.
thing to eat.
I'll get knocked off of Catholic television trying to say it.
Yes, it sounds a little vulgar, but essentially it's a tofu turkey. Okay. It's not huge, it's quite small, and it has stuffing inside of it. It comes with a giblet gravy, or giblets, I think is how you pronounce it over here. It comes with the gravy.
But not real.
No, it's all, it's completely vegan. No. It comes with tempeh drumsticks, it even comes with wish sticks. That you can pull apart and chew on. And we actually, the San Antonio Vegetarian Society already has a vegetarian Thanksgiving, and we managed to gobble, if you'll pardon the pun, 4 Tofurkeys. There was only 40 of us.
40 of you and to eat 4 of them?
To eat 4 and a plethora of other things. And you saw when you came to the potluck all the different foods we have. We don't just eat salad and beans. We have quite an array of some gourmet foods and some regular foods that you find in your fridge every day. And come again soon, please, by the way.
Oh, I will.
I missed you.
You know that
Come by anytime.
And my schedule is nuts. Yeah. Tell me something, because I am always, my background is as a Roman Catholic theologian, but I had an emphasis in Eastern religions. And a lot of food that's vegetarian food comes from Middle Eastern countries.
Very much so.
Is there a historical reason for that?
Not that I've studied. I found that there's not really one religion that's all vegetarian. Now, the Seventh-day Adventists like to call themselves vegetarian, but I haven't met too many that actually are. And you meet a lot of Buddhists who are vegetarian, you meet a lot of Hindus who are vegetarian, even a lot of Jewish people. But there isn't really one religion that celebrates vegetarian as a whole. You can find pockets of it here and there. And what was I going to tell you? To answer your question, why? I'm not sure if it came from an economic need so much as a spiritual need. I know in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, to eat meat is a gourmet treat. And they can't eat meat every day, 3 times a day like we do in America. And so they eat rice, lentils, beans, and they subside on that. And to them, that's a perfectly normal meal. But when you find a Persian restaurant or a Turkish restaurant or an Indian restaurant especially, you'll find lots of wonderful vegetarian food. And it's not so hard to find. So I prefer to stick to those diets.
I do too. And they seem to be better for you.
I certainly think so. People panic when they find out I'm vegetarian, and they look at me and they're so worried about me. And I tell them, well, I'm vegetarian. I haven't eaten meat for 22 years. And firstly, they gasp, and then they look me up and down to see which body parts are missing. I'm all here. And they're so concerned about where do I get my calcium, where do I get my iron, where do I get my protein. They're very concerned. I tell them to take a good look at me, ask me if I look unhealthy, have they ever seen me sick, have they ever seen me tired. And they usually say, no, you look pretty good, Kat. You look pretty slim and healthy and energetic. And that's what a vegetarian diet is all about. It's about energy. And back to Thanksgiving, one of the number one things people will tell you about Thanksgiving Day is that they eat a big feast and then they slump onto the couch and they're exhausted and they watch the game and they sit around with their family. Yeah. And food is not supposed to exhaust you. It's supposed to energize you. It's supposed to give you energy to continue through the day. It's not supposed to make you tired. What kind of food is that makes you tired? So I like to think of food as an energy source, a life source. And back to the compassion, I don't think it's a Thanksgiving-oriented kind thing to do to murder a bird and eat it for Thanksgiving, especially in such violent times that we're living in right now. I think we should all lean more towards a compassionate lifestyle. And a common saying in the vegetarian movement is violence begins at the breakfast table. If you think about it, we all sit down in the morning, and we read the paper, and we visit with our family, and we we gobble a piece of sausage, a piece of bacon, and we run out of the door. And then we go and stand around the water fountain and we talk about peace and we talk about violence. Well, it's a very violent thing to do to kill an animal for food. And I think people should think about that as they're going through their day.
So for you, well, let me back up 1 second. There are people who are vegetarian for health's sake, and then there are people who are vegetarian for the compassionate sake.
Right, very much.
And those distinctions, while some people can do it for the very self-centered reason of being healthier, there are those who actually recognize that being an ethical vegetarian is one because Mahatma Gandhi said it, how we care for animals.
Exactly. You can judge an animal. You can judge a country based on how they treat their animals. Yeah,
and
very powerful statement. Right. And everything that's living is everything that can feel pain or that can suffer. When people talk about animals, well, who are they? They can't speak. Well, I'm sure they can't. They can't communicate, but they can suffer. They can suffer, and that's important to think about. Gandhi was wonderful. I'm glad you brought him up. He was a wonderful vegetarian.
And he was a wonderful teacher for this world, for this
Yeah.
planet. He, Mother Teresa, that whole concept of caring for those who are suffering.
Right, and Mother Teresa gave so much with so little. She had nothing. I was she. She had nothing to give, and she did as much as she could. Yeah, she was amazing too.
I'm going to do a teaching about Mother Teresa next week.
Wonderful.
About shock and trauma and all of that,
Yeah.
because she was a remarkable, remarkable woman. So for you then, doing Thanksgiving is more like establishing ties, the things that I was talking about. It's about relationship and not about necessarily the foods that we eat.
Not really, to me. In fact, I moved here from England 20 years ago, if you couldn't tell, and I'd never really heard of Thanksgiving. We have harvest at home, but we don't celebrate it in quite the same way they do in America. Certainly, it seems to me like Thanksgiving is bigger than Christmas over here. It's huge. People fly across the country.
Oh, yeah.
They take the week off work, and they really get into it. It's wonderful. I love to be with my family at Thanksgiving. I have a lot of family here in America. And over the years, they have adapted so much to my lifestyle. It's wonderful. I'm the only vegetarian really in the family. And then as the years go by, they started taking the butter out of the sprouts, started making a vegetarian stuffing, 2 stuffings. And then they just said, oh, let's make a vegetarian one. You can all have it. And then they made 2 gravies. And then now everyone can have the mushroom gravy that Kat had. So as the years have gone by, my wonderful family, the whole meal is vegan apart from the turkey. That's okay for them to eat. And I will bring my own tofu. They can look jealously at it across the table. But it's all about making your own choices and holding your head up high. And if you are vegetarian, if you don't want to eat a dead animal, and you are going to your family's Thanksgiving, you don't just sit there and eat it just to keep the peace. You avoid it, or you bring your own food. That's what I really like to do when I go to eat at someone's house. I don't want them to worry about making a fuss. What am I going to make for Kaz? And I want to be invited to dinner. I'll just bring my own dish, and it'll usually be gobbled, all of it. Yeah. In fact, some of the I really like the meat analogs. And the way for me to help people understand it is I like to call myself a frustrated meat eater, which means I like the taste of meat. I like the texture. I just don't like the river of blood that leads back to the slaughterhouse. I don't like the cruelty involved with eating meat, but the taste of it, I've always liked it. So we make barbecued ribs out of textured vegetable protein and something called seitan, which is wheat gluten, and we use tofu in just about everything. I love tofu, as you know. And so I like to eat, you can buy in any supermarket, you can buy in Whole Foods and in the Central Market and in HEB, you can buy breakfast sausages, you can buy phony bologna, bacon, chiclet.
I know.
And if you have that craving for that chewy texture and the flavor of meat, you can still never eat any meat at all and still have that craving, taken care of, very much so, yeah.
I know. I use the breakfast strips instead of bacon.
Aren't
I
they
use
wonderful?
They are.
Tofu hot dogs, vegetarian chili, tofu hot dogs. I dare any meat eater out there to eat the tofu pup and tell me that it doesn't taste exactly like a hot dog, as long as it's been since I've had one. Once you put the relish and the mustard and everything on there,
Cover it up.
In fact, a lot of baseball parks in America now are having tofu hot dogs on the menu. It hasn't happened here yet. I think it'll be a while.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
But hey, Mission, are you listening to me? That would be so much fun. If we could just, we like to fit in with, I think I speak for a lot of vegetarians when I say that we have a special lifestyle, but we like to fit in with everybody else. We just want to go to a fast food place and eat a quick meal like everybody else does. It should be more accessible. It should be easier for us to keep our vegetarian lifestyle. So it shouldn't be so much trouble. San Antonio is quite a hard place to be vegetarian. Well over 1 million people now. There's not one vegetarian restaurant in the city, unfortunately.
That is totally vegetarian.
Right. Although there's many, many vegetarians that have restaurants that have vegetarian food, and they're all on our website if anybody needs it, especially wonderful Indian food, wonderful Thai food. You go up the road to Austin, and there's lots of vegetarian restaurants. Lots in Dallas, lots in Houston. San Antonio, we're a little behind the times. I just don't think there's enough of us here.
Well, you know, I find that the mentality here requires that we do a lot of educating to what is more broad-based.
Yeah.
That, you know, there's a world out there that's bigger than we are.
Yes.
And very different from what we are.
Different.
Very different from what we are in the United States.
And that's why people are so startled when they hear about someone, what do you don't eat meat? It's so un-American. You know, in England, 20% of people consider themselves to be vegetarian. In America, it's 2.5. And in Texas, it's 1%. And I think I know them all. If I haven't met you yet, give me a call. And it's nice to find like-minded people, whoever you are. It's nice to find people who believe in the same things that you do.
One of the things that I found that was really beautiful about the dinner that we had at the Vegetarian Society meeting, and there were people who came to that meeting who came up and hugged and kissed me and thanked me for my television show. Yeah, who you were excited. Yeah, they I get that everywhere I go. For people who go, oh, she's there, she's there.
She's real, right.
What I found was at that meeting that there were people who were from all walks of life, from all nationalities, from all religious persuasions. It was really, really interesting to see.
It's an amazing group. If you looked at the group and you didn't know anything about them, we've got people in their 80s, we've got teenagers, and like you said, the different nationalities. We've got people from Trinidad, Japan, East Africa, India, Wales, wonderful people. And you look at all of them and say, what are they all doing together? You'd never ever figure it out, apart from the fact that there's very few overweight people in the group.
That's true.
That might be one thing that somebody would notice.
That's exactly.
Vegetarian diet doesn't lend itself to too much obesity.
Right.
There's always a genetic difference in people, but mainly it's a slinky kind of a slim diet.
It really
without
is.
trying. There's not much fat and cholesterol in a vegetarian diet. But you never really know what these people are all doing together, apart from the fact that we're all laughing and hugging and having a wonderful time. You might want to join in, and then you'd see the food, and then you'd notice the difference.
And the food was really pretty broad-based. I brought some of my vegetarian cooking that is really South Louisiana vegetarian. You know, so
Remind me of what you brought.
Oh, I can't even remember. I just remember it was South Louisiana, and it was something that had lots of good spices with Tony Chachere's and the things that we use in South Louisiana with rice and that kind of thing. It was good.
Yeah, we don't usually theme our potluck meetings. We tell people to bring anything they want, with the exception of Thanksgiving. We try and keep it traditional because we like cranberry sauce as much as everyone else, and we love mushroom gravy and all the other great things that go baked acorn squash. The easiest thing in the world to make is you just cut it in half, take out the seeds, put soy margarine and brown sugar and bake it. Oh, it's delicious.
It is.
And that's something you can take to anybody's house that anybody would like to eat.
Let's talk a little more about establishing ties, because the thing that I found that was so interesting, and I keep going back to this whole. Oh, you know what? I didn't tell people they could call in here. The telephone number in the studio is 734-5371, and you can call in here if you like. I'm sorry, I just totally got all excited about you being here. If somebody wants to call in, feel free to call it 734-5371. This whole concept, the thing that so strikes me is all of these people from different cultures all over the world had a connection with each other and were building relationships that were compassionate. Everybody was laughing and teasing and playing and getting to know each other, and it was establishing those ties that go across boundaries and borders and limitations that we normally put on. If we look at somebody and they're dressed differently from us, we go, oh, you're a stranger and I'm not.
Right. And isn't that funny how food, simple thing as food, a diet, can bring everyone together? Isn't that amazing?
It is
And
astonishing.
it's nice that you notice that. It's pleasant that you notice that. And it's an interesting observation that you make. And like you said, not everyone in the group is interested at all in animal welfare. The funny thing is, how can you say, I've met people who say, oh, I'm vegetarian, but it's just for health reasons. And they don't ever want you to, God forbid, that you would be compassionate, that it would be for animal rights reasons that you would stop eating meat. But people tend to, they just want you to know, oh, it's just for health. Okay, well, you're still saving animals' lives. And in the same way, if you're an ethical vegan, as I am, then secondary for me is my health, but I'm getting the benefits anyway. I'm getting the wonderful benefits. And when you think about Thanksgiving, did you know that 40 to 50 million turkeys are slaughtered each year for Thanksgiving at this time of year? of course this is year round, but just at this time of year, that's a lot of suffering, that's a lot of death, and they're pumped full of antibiotics, hormones, steroids, they're riddled with fats and cholesterol. 47% of a turkey's leg is fat. And we're always worried about fat, we're always worried about our diets and our cholesterol, and we have our blood pressure checked, and we're very concerned, and we should be, about our health. And this is one of the worst things that you can eat, and it's one of the cruelest things that can happen to these gentle birds that are intelligent, inquisitive, social creatures. It's a shame that we do it. We should think about it at the end of the day. It's a
Well, I
real
have to
shame.
tell you, I knew a really mean turkey when I was a kid growing up on the farm. One mean turkey, but we called it a watch turkey because when the cars would come down the road, the dust would fly, and this turkey would come and it would bang on the side of the car, and it was a watch turkey.
Right. Well, so it was an intelligent turkey,
Oh,
and an
great
interesting
turkey.
story. That's a good story. And should we therefore chop his head off and eat it?
Well,
Because it was right. You didn't. You needed it by the sound of it. We all need a turkey like that in our backyard.
How would you do if you were teaching children? Let's do some parenting things.
Sure.
Because, I have people who call all the time for this television. Doc, tell me what you would do. Parenting things. What do you do?
Gently and carefully. Children are so compassionate to begin with. They're ready. They grow up on their own, being very compassionate. They reach out to animals. They want to touch animals. And I grew up eating meat, and I didn't know what it was. I was a kid chewing away on whatever my mother gave me, and it was only when I was 13 that I finally realized, hey, wait a minute, Mom, what is this? And she told me, and I stopped of my own accord. But if you put a child in a crib with a baby rabbit, bunny rabbit, and an apple, which do you think the kid's going to eat? We're not
To eat?
Yeah, which
Don't don't put any apples in cribs with babies.
They'll choke on the
They'll choke.
on
Don't put babies and apples together.
We're not designed to attack and eat animals, which is how carnivorous animals behave. They run and they attack an animal, they chase it down, they rip it to pieces, they eat it. We don't do that. We allow the slaughterhouse to do that. So when you talk about children, they're naturally vegetarian. We have a Veggie Kids Club here in San Antonio. It's a sister group of the Vegetarian Society.
Really?
We have 33 families involved, and they meet every month also. And they're tiny little vegetarians. And most of them obviously vegetarians because they're vegetarian parents. But some of them do not have vegetarian parents. And parents will tell me, well, they just decided they didn't want to eat meat anymore. And you have to be careful when you talk to children. You don't want to spook them. You don't want to show them horrible images. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. You'll find that children naturally lead toward a vegetarian diet all by themselves. And if anybody does have a vegetarian child out there, if they have any questions about nutrition, or it's tough when the kid goes to school and they're too young to really explain why they're eating vegetarian food and why they have a wham instead of spam sandwich. It's sometimes hard for them to explain on their own.
Marianne, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I can hardly hear. Can we have the sound up on that, please? Marianne, keep talking to me. We're getting the sound.
Okay, I am interested in learning a vegetarian diet that would fulfill all the needs of my diabetic diet.
I can definitely give us some information about that. She can call after the show.
Right,
She can email me.
And,
That's a good question that I get asked.
And what number would that be?
I'm sorry?
What number would
The
that
number
be?
that's coming up on the screen,
Okay.
has his name, is the telephone number. Marianne, let me speak to this also because it's an issue in this community in terms of diabetes. There's some research that the Atkins diet, which is a high protein, high fat meat diet, is really good for people in terms of their diabetes. Now don't shake your head yet, let me finish. You're choking. Yeah, just wait. It's actually not the Atkins diet that is so good. It's that if you control your carbohydrates and have limited carbohydrates and high vegetables and high fruits, that's better for you than all of the diets altogether.
Right.
And they're giving me a signal. Is that a correct signal? It's 30 seconds?